Welcome to Controlling Cash Flow, Processes and People within AR, brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council, and before I introduce you to our expert speaker and sponsor, I have some brief housekeeping items. First, we'll have a live Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please use your GoToWebinar panel to ask questions at any time. We'll get to as many questions as possible in the hour. Next, we'll have a couple of polling questions. And again, please use your control panel to answer polls and benchmark your peers. Next, you'll receive a link to this webcast within the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our sponsor, Giviti, an AR collections management and automation platform, which helps you streamline your invoice to cash management flow. With that, allow me to introduce our guest presenter, Rebecca Gerger, an 8+ year veteran of research and B2B sales, ranging from complex enterprise level software in the field of AR automation, workforce management, and portfolio management. She has supported hundreds of businesses alongside their journey to adopt software solutions in a variety of industries. Rebecca is a senior account executive at Giviti, working with clients such as PwC, Monday.com, EY, and more. Rebecca is a competitive weightlifting athlete and part-time CrossFit coach. So don't mess with Rebecca. Welcome, Rebecca. Rebecca, we're there?
Yep.
I'm handing it over to you.
Thanks for that intro, Neil. Guys, it's nice to meet everybody. I hope I didn't scare off anyone with the weightlifting. Neil, if you want to kind of start that agenda slide so we can get this kicked off together.
Yeah, do you see it yet?
No, I don't.
Really?
In the meanwhile, guys, just there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate that. So guys, I really appreciate everyone taking the time here today. I think that I want to just go over generally the goal of kind of the flow of our conversation as we go through this webinar. And then we're going to really begin this session together. The first section is really going to be dedicated towards understanding why now. Why is AR truly at the center of businesses today as opposed to yesterday? Then we're going to talk a lot about that traditional approach to AR. Really, we need to have a better understanding of where we're coming from to understand where this field is going. We're going to then kind of delve a little bit into some of those core consequences and understand the causality as to some of those issues that we do see today. And then grow into discussing the evolution of accounts receivable and some of the best practices and direct applications that we see teams using to actually execute on a new and upcoming strategy that we're seeing within the field. So the first question we have to be asking ourselves, I'm sure you guys experience this as well. I mean, why now? I mean, cash flow has always been an issue for companies, just as health is to the body, but ultimately why specifically now is working capital standing at the center of businesses? The first thing, of course, the overarching issue is that there's a lot of shifts occurring in the global economy. We all know this, we all live this, both as individuals and as companies, but higher inflation rates and really just ultimately a lot of vulnerability within the global economy is making it so that working capital sits at the center of a lot of the conversations within businesses. Everyone's trying to get working capital where possible. People are trying to collect wherever there's opportunity, and companies themselves find it hard to give up that working capital, right, to pay their clients themselves. We're also seeing from just a department level, departments within companies are being asked to do more with less. And finance is not an exception to that role. In fact, because of these shifts, ultimately, we see increased output expectations from finance teams. And that really is an issue because I'm sure, many of the teams we work with, they tell us it's just very, very hard to win that. I guess you could call it a war, but the company itself views finance a lot of times as a cost as a cost center as opposed to bringing more revenue, right? So how do we really navigate with that environment? And then last is we're seeing within AR teams, there's a high employee turnover. And that's really made worse by the fact that there's very volatile, churn internally, employee issues especially within the United States. It's very hard to find a quality hire. So if you could just kind of, there we go to the next slide. So what is the traditional AR approach? Again, we kind of have to have a clear understanding of what we're talking about before we move forward here in this discussion. But typically within the traditional AR approach, you're going to have your sales reps, finance teams, and collections teams part of that process. It really depends on the industry as well as the size of the company, how involved sales is versus the collections team, and so on and so forth. You could be reaching out to your clients daily, weekly, monthly, maybe based on aging, okay, different frequencies. And then ultimately this is occurring through Excel spreadsheets. We might have a manual outreach process via emails. Maybe we're prioritizing based out of aging reports. And then maybe some companies have some layer of dunning already that they're doing as well alongside that outreach to clients on aging. Now, ultimately what we know as well, I mean, regardless of whether or not we're talking about a traditional strategy or kind of the future of what is AR as a business process, client behavior is varied. We know that within most companies that we speak with here at Gaviti, teams say, hey, I do have some problematic clients, but I've also got those who are strong paying, and I have a client group as well that just needs one touch point and a reminder. And when we're thinking about how we're going to navigate those clients, we're of course putting them into those buckets as well, and that's pretty standard to have different approaches to those different groups. Now, before we dig a little bit deeper into some of the negative consequences of what we see within traditional AR and why people are moving past this, we must mention and recognize that there are positive benefits, okay? The first is that it's very convenient. Teams are already used to working out of Excel. Teams are used to working out of the notes section in their ERP, and they're used to sending manual emails. So it doesn't take a lot of change management to get people on board with this process. But also it's controllable to a certain point. I hear a lot of times when I speak with, I think, smaller and growing companies, when they start off with a smaller group of clients, it's working. They have high engagement with their clients, they have great relationships, the collectors know how to reach out, and that really is controllable until a certain threshold. Now, when we get to the next slide, we're going to see ultimately that traditional approach does have a limit, right? As the volume of invoices and customers increases, that traditional method really turns into more of a costly and inefficient process for the business. It's going to have negative effects on that cash conversion cycle, and it's going to ultimately make it so that the work we're putting in is not necessarily what we're getting out.